Madam Chair, we are now live.
Thank you, Mr. Moya. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February 8th, 2021 Finance, Government, and Operations Committee meeting of the City Council. I call this meeting to order. We have all committee members present today via Zoom. This is a remote or online meeting where all participants will be on video or audio conference. We're holding this meeting remotely so that everyone can participate safely while we are conducting business under the public health emergency. We appreciate your patience as FGO meetings are conducted this way. Members of the public will be able to address the committee if they have signed up for live public comment per the rules published on the agenda and on our website Friday. Speakers will be moved into the meeting room 2 at a time. They will remain muted with their camera off until they are called upon to speak, at which point they can turn their camera on, unmute themselves, and will have 1.5 minutes to provide comments to the committee. After that, they will again be muted and returned to be an attendee of the Zoom webinar. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting live through YouTube and Zoom webinar. The live stream can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. And for those watching on the live stream, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to go ahead and start with public comment. Hello to those joining us to provide public comment. If you're watching the YouTube live feed for this meeting, please mute or turn it off at this time. Here are the public comment ground rules. Comments are to be addressed to the committee members only. Each participant has 1.5 minutes to present. Any disruptive conduct will result in removal from the Zoom meeting room. There will be a 1.5 minute time limit, and the timer will start once you begin speaking, and the Zoom moderator, Mr. Moya, will let you know when your time is up. Mr. Moya, if you will please call the name of the first speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first speaker is Twyla McComb, followed by Melissa Sanchez. Ms. McComb, feel free to turn your video, unmute yourself, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Madam Chair and committee members, my name is Twyla McComb and I'm the Open Space Advisory Board Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today regarding R21-134. Because R134 was introduced only a week ago and the board was not given a chance to view the legislation in advance of the introduction, and because we haven't had a chance to meet, I'm not representing a approved position here today. However, the inclusion of the pool property was discussed at length at our last meeting, and I want to provide you with a little bit of additional information. I'm here to ask that action on R134, which enables the liquidation of $2.2 million from the Open Space Trust Fund, be deferred until after February 18th so that the board can make a recommendation. Failing that, I would ask that you amend Section 2 out of the bill, which is in direct conflict with current ordinances. On January 25th, the board happily voted the pool property onto the acquisition list. This property meets all of the criteria and is exactly the kind of property that we look for open space. But since this was our first discussion about the acquisition of this property, we had some questions about funding. We moved into a closed session and the staff provided us with the details of the acquisition, including funding sources that might include the trust fund. There is an ordinance on the books in regards to the Open Space Trust Fund. The ordinance says in part that the principle of the Open Space Trust Fund shall be maintained intact and that the trust fund is permanent and irrevocable. In view of this legal impediment, the board, in an effort to be constructive, took 2 steps. First of all, we approved a motion asking that the city of Albuquerque negotiate with the seller for a phased payment option that would give the city and the advisory board time to consider all funding options. The idea behind that motion was to relieve the immediate pressure on the trust fund. Second, a special meeting of the board was scheduled for February 18th so that all members of the boards could have a focused discussion of what our 2021 recommendation would be with respect to the trust fund. Again, there's 2 ordinances that discuss the Open Space Advisory Board duties to advise the mayor, the city council, and the city treasurer regarding matters that have something to do with the trust fund.
Thank you, Ms. McComb. Your 1.5 minutes has expired.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Counselor.
I just had a question for Ms. McComb. Ms.
Please
McComb,
go ahead.
thank you, Madam Chair. Were you done with your comments?
I just have a few other things to say. I just want to clarify the board's how we feel about the pool property.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. McComb.
Is that okay? Thank you,
Yes,
Madam
ma'am.
Chair. So I don't know if anybody on the board, we voted unanimously to add the pool property to the acquisition list, full knowing that we would be talking about actually acquiring that property fairly soon. So I don't know anybody who would say that it wasn't a great idea. Really, the rest of the bill with all of the properties that are on it was great, but adding the pool property to it was like the icing on the cake to us. We're very excited to see it there. But we feel we have an obligation to the ordinances to be able to make a recommendation. And we have not had time to do that. I want to let this committee and the city council know that I can speak for the board when I say that we are standing by to help you make the pool property purchase happen. We just need a little bit of time to figure out how to make that happen. So thank you very much for your time today, and thanks for the extra time. I appreciate that. And if you guys have any questions, you can certainly reach out to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. McComb. I think that Counselor Harris might have a question.
Yes, Counselor Harris?
Yes, this is a question for the administration, and which is, one of the things that I've been concerned about for many years is I think the Open Space Trust Fund is something that makes absolutely no sense. It's a funding mechanism that lacks all logic. What I mean by that, we have a pot of money that's sitting there earning past book or interest for the most part. When we have land that is disappearing, like the pool property, it is land. We've already purchased property near there with a trust fund. And this is property that is under intense developmental pressure. And to leave money sitting in a bank account earning 1 or 2% interest while land is disappearing, I think is something that really we need to look at very seriously. So my question to the administration is, how much interest have we earned on that trust fund? And by the way, the trust fund was implemented in the 70s when we had 15% interest. I think as time goes on, when we've had essentially 0% interest policies in the United States for a decade now, I think we need to look at this. How much interest has the trust fund earned?
Counselor Harris, would it be all right with you if we finish watching and
Sure.
listening to the public comments, and then the administration can be
That's fine.
prepared to answer that when we get to that bill?
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Moya, if you want to continue with public comment, and then we'll come back to that one later.
Thank you very much, counselors.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our next speaker is Melissa Sanchez, and she'll be followed by Taja Young. Ms. Sanchez, feel free to turn your video, unmute yourself, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I am the Executive Director for the Albuquerque Westside Business Association, and we stand in full support of the purchase of the pool property. This property is vital to the bosque and our ecosystem, and we need to preserve and protect our land, water, and wildlife. And it's also important for residents of the community who utilize the open space, especially now during times of isolation and social distancing. And I just want to say I'm really grateful for the work Senator Candelaria and our Westside legislators have done to allocate funding for the purchase of this property, and we would hate to see the funds be returned if not used for the purchase. So Madam Chair and Committee, I urge you to prioritize the purchase of the pool property. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Our next speaker is Taja Young. Feel free to turn your video, unmute yourself, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Good afternoon, members of the committee and counselors. I'm Tasha Young. I am Vice Chair of the Open Space Advisory Board. I speak only for myself because as Twyla McComb has told you, the board is going to have a special meeting next week so that we can figure out exactly what we want to say, in addition to being in full support of the purchase of the pool property. So I just want to add that I looked at the charge to the Open Space Advisory Board today. I kept thinking, we're advisory. It says we're supposed to study and advise and evaluate and recommend. And I think that's all we're asking you, is just to give us sufficient time so that we can partner with you and do the job that we are required to do. Thank you very much, members of the committee, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Madam Chair, we had 3 other individuals signed up to speak, but I do not see them in the attendees. So that would conclude public comment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moya. Thank you all for participating in the public comments that were here. We'll now move on to agenda item A, EC 236. EC 236 is performance measure revamp objective, second quarter update. I move a receipt be noted. And it looks like Councillor, I saw Councillor Pena first for a second. Thank you, everyone. Is there any comment or questions? All right, Ms. Hinojos.
Councillor Borrego.
Yes.
Councillor Harris. Is that a yes, Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item B, EC 238. Report of FY20 outstanding encumbrances reappropriated in FY21. I move receipt be noted. Thank you, Councilor Borrego, I see. Thank you. And for a second, Councilor Borrego, anybody have any questions? Any councilors, administration questions, comments? Councilor Borrego, is that just your second?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Ms. Hinojos, if you want to go to a vote, please.
Councillor Borrego.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to agenda item C. EC 253 is approving the real estate sales agreement for lot numbered 1 of block numbered 3 of the Ives addition containing approximately 0.32 acres. I move approval.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Do any councilors have any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Hinojos.
Councillor Borrego.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item D, EC 254, Early Head Start Quarterly Report for October, November, and December 2020. I move a receipt be noted. Thank you, Councillor Sena, for a second. Any comments or questions from councilors, or is there anyone here that would like to add to the report and comment on it? Okay, Ms. Hinojos.
Councillor Borrego.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item E, EC 255, Staff Telecommuting Cost Benefit Analysis for certain city employees. I move a receipt be noted. Thank
Second.
you, Councillor Pena. Thank you. Councillor Sennett. Was there any comments or questions from any councillors? Councillor Pena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add that this staff telecommuting cost benefit analysis for certain employees, I think I've mentioned this before, just that, I thought it was important now. It was something that had piqued my curiosity previous to this. And then, during this time of COVID, when we actually, many of our employees had to work from home, I thought it was a great opportunity to look and see if this is something that maybe as a city we can implement moving forward. So I think there's a lot of good general information in there. There's a potential, obviously, there's a cost associated with it. I think, legal and HR would have to work out several elements of it, but there's a real potential of savings moving forward if it's something that we can do in the future. And I just want to say that, and hopefully the city employees that we have now working from home, have realized the benefit of being able to be there and getting their work done, being productive, and still having the opportunity to be able to be home with their family and do other things. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And I see the budget conference room popped up. Is there something you would like to add?
Madam Chair, Kevin Noel and myself, Lawrence Davis, are here for any questions.
Okay. Thank you all so much. Any questions from the councillors at this point? Councillor Borrego?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Councillor Pena, because it says certain employees, so I was just wondering, are we going to be doing this for the entire city at some point in time, or just employees that are non-essential, or how does that work?
Madam Chair, Councillor Borrego, actually, there's only a small percentage of our staff that can actually work from home. It would require that people don't necessarily have to be in the office, or, we have a lot of employees who are essential workers. I think we have like 20% of our employees that potentially could be eligible to do this. So, it's a small group of folks, but, there could potentially be a savings realized. And, it's just something that, like I said, I really wanted to dig deeper and find out more information about the potential of doing this. So I guess time will tell as we move forward. So thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, councillors. Any other questions of the administration right now? Okay, if we want to go ahead, Ms. Hinojos, with a vote.
Councillor Borrego,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Pena,
Yes.
Councillor Sena,
Yes.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you so much. I've been informed that somebody that had signed up for public comment has been able to get online with us now. So I'm going to go ahead and give that guest a moment, a minute and a half, if Mr. Moya will please bring them back in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Joe Valles, if you could turn on your video, or feel free to unmute yourself, and your 1.5 minutes of public comment will begin when you start speaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I apologize. I was outside. It's windy. I had my grandson. But anyway, here I go. I wrote a little memo here, and it said, members of the Finance and Government Operations Committee. I said, greetings and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Dr. Joel Valles. I'm president of the Grande Heights Neighborhood Association, a neighborhood association with one of its boundaries on the west bluff of the Bosque and Rio Grande, south of the property before you. I also serve on the Executive Council of the Westside Coalition of Neighborhood Associations, and I chair the Intercoalition Panel of Neighborhood Coalitions throughout the city. All these associations and other institutions and numerous residents throughout the city have been consistent in their support to purchase, preserve, and protect this precious property immediately adjacent to the Oxbow Preserve, for the enjoyment of future generations to come. The Open Space Advisory Board added this property to its priority acquisition list. And so we urge you in the strongest of terms to acquire the pool property using funds from the Open Space Trust Fund, in addition to the legislative capital outlay funding of $4.5 million. And I thank you. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, Dr. Valles. Okay, we will move on to item F on the agenda, 049. Councilor Borrego?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to defer this to the March 8th FGO meeting.
Okay. And item 049 is amending Chapter 2, Article 2, Section 1 of the Revised Ordinances of Albuquerque, New Mexico, 1994, the Capital Improvements Ordinance, for the creation of a capital set aside for underserved areas and communities. I see a second from Councilor Sena. Is there any further discussion, questions from the councilors? Okay, Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. Item G on the agenda, I'll go ahead and move a do pass for Councilors Benton and Davis for R127, requiring the transfer of all excess parking division revenue to the general fund. Do I have a second? Councilor Sena, thank you so much. And I do see, first I'm going to go with the councilors on the committee, and then I do see that Councilor Benton has joined us. Anybody have any questions or comments right now? Councilor Benton, did you want to add anything?
Thank you. No, Madam Chair. I think it's kind of self-explanatory. This fund does fluctuate. There have been numerous issues with regard to the parking division that sort of reached the public eye with how exactly fees are being imposed and so forth. And I think this is something that the council needs to kind of take on. I encourage it going to full council with or without recommendation. But I do feel that the idea that there's an incentive essentially to issue parking tickets in a way. The history of this fund is long. It goes back to the days when we were developing a lot of new parking garages, and it seems like time to discuss that. And so this is a component of that I encourage the committee bring to full council. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Benton. Councilor Harris?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And just kind of a question thinking out loud is that it sounds like that what Councilor Benton is really after is to make the parking fund or not an enterprise fund anymore. And maybe that's all should be wrapped in the budget discussion, maybe not a standalone bill that just requires the money to be transferred over. I'm just, maybe the council could, because I'm not in favor of this or opposed to it. It's the first I've heard of this, but it sounds intriguing. But perhaps the council could respond to that.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilor Harris. Yeah, really, this is, I think the direct issue certainly could be and should be budgetary, and I don't really care whether this bill is approved prior to the budget even necessarily. However, if it's the will of the council, it'd be good to approve it for we finish the budget process and look at that. But it's a funny fit. It's a funny fit, this division, and they've never made a lot of revenue and so forth, but at the same time they are involved in our own neighborhoods, in our own constituents, parking issues at times, quite often, in fact. So that's all great, but the motivating factor and the ability to keep doing what they're doing, whatever that is, which I'm not sure is very clear anymore. I think it's time to just look at that as the council, and it is a budgetary matter, certainly. And this is a venue to discuss it. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor. I see Councillor Senna and Borrego, and then Councillor Davis, if you want to say anything. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Senna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to move this to full council without recommendation, because I do believe that the full council should be able to talk on this. So I'm going to make that motion.
Okay. And for the sake of simplicity, since I introduced this with a move a do pass, I'm willing to go ahead and change that to a motion without recommendation, if that is what we need to do for the rules. And then I saw Councillor Pena seconded that. Mr. Melendez?
I second, and I think that, Madam Chair, I think that motion trumps your motion. I'm not sure. Oh, there's Chris. He could answer that. But I actually wanted to ask the administration, just some of their initial thoughts. I know we're going to move it on to full council, but, I kind of find it interesting. It was my impression that parking division really doesn't really see very much money revenue. So they can just provide some clarity on that.
Okay, Councillor Pena, if it's all right, we're going to go ahead and I'll have Mr. Melendez respond to confirm that we're on the right track. And then Councillor Borrego had her hand up, and then we'll go to administration for some clarity.
Madam Chair, it appears that you've amended your motion and that has been seconded. So that's all that's necessary, since you withdrew the original motion. To do that, you're good to vote on the no rec. Thank you, sir.
Councillor Borrego?
Yeah, and I agree with it going to full council without recommendation, because I would like during that time to for the legal department to look into some issues regarding this particular issue, because there are some development agreements that are tied to some of our parking. And I can give you an example, Councillor Benton. One is over at the Gold Street parking structure. Behind it, there was actually part of that parking is supposed to be designated to the Gold Street apartments. Another example that I would give you is probably around Albuquerque High. So I'm just wondering if it's really, there are some issues that might be a little problematic, because they are tied to some development agreements. And those are just two examples that I know of. I know of a couple more examples, and I'm happy to talk with the administration about it. But I just want to be clear that, if we're doing this, we're also looking at those development agreements.
Councillor, you're on mute.
The dreaded mute and highly embarrassing mute. Madam Chair, without question, what this division does is interesting to all of us, and again, I'll just put it out there that this is kind of a way to discuss what they really do and why they really should be. And the two examples that you mentioned, I'm well aware of, and certainly the operations of the old Albuquerque High School structure have been a source of a lot of attention, unwanted attention, I would say, by my office over the years. And the decisions by which this became a an enterprise fund. I'm not that familiar with, honestly, myself. I would like to understand better. And I think this is, I personally, as sponsor, am completely open to the administration giving us reports, explaining why or why not, et cetera. So I'm all for bringing it to full council. So thanks. Sorry to take so much of your time to the committee.
That's okay. Thank you, Councilor. I would like to go to administration there in the budget conference room and let you all catch up, please. And Councilor Pena had some questions of you as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilor Benton and Davis, I just want to clarify. I did say last time there was about 5.6 million in working capital balance. That was with the expectations that revenues would come in at 9.1 million. However, now that we got our current FY20 CAFR actuals, they came in a lot lower, a little under 5 million at 4.8 million. So the fund balance as it sits after fiscal year 20 is 1.5 million. And that's primarily due to revenues not hitting expectations, and roll backwards, that's primarily due to COVID. And Jeremy, who is also on, probably has more details about that than I can provide.
Thank you. Mr. Kaiser?
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair and councilors. Some questions that were brought up in the last meeting was in regards to some of the fee increases that we'd seen here in parking. So just a quick history overview of it. So on May 16th of 2016, ordinance was changed to reflect the fine increase for citations. There was an increase of $10 per citation issued along with the escalation of fines. On June 15th of 2020, we introduced an online portal in which people could get their on-street parking permits through the City of Albuquerque Parking Division. Residential permits, visitor permits were at $25 each per vehicle per year. Landlord permits were set for $30 per year. Caregiver permits were set at $5 per 6 months. Contractor permits and moving vans were set to $5 per day. On August 1st of 2020, the loading zone guideline, price guideline had changed. The original price was at $192 for the first 22 feet and $875 per additional foot. The new pricing was split into two different pricing guidelines, which split into the downtown area and the non-downtown area / non-metered areas. The downtown area was set at $500 for the first 200 feet and $50 per additional foot. The non-downtown area, the non-metered areas, were set at $200 at the first 20 feet and $50 per additional foot. And the last price change that we did was on December 15th of 2020, which was in regards to the max stay rates at our parking structures. And that was changed from $8 to $10. Dealing with the excess revenue for parking wise, we are not going to see a lot of excess revenue within the next 10 years. The amount of stuff that we have to do within our parking structures and on-street parking is considerable, and I'll keep this one really short. I did a little bit of explanations on it just in case anybody doesn't have it or needs it. It's available and I get it to you. The modernization of elevators in 14 of our structures, we are looking at about a $3.5 million cost. The exhaust fan at the Civic Underground, $1.2 million. Fire system repairs, we are estimating at a $3 million cost. Upgrade on our on-street parking meters, we are looking at around $400,000. Update and replace some of the lighting fixtures we have in our various structures, we are looking at around $200,000. Generator repairs and replacements, we don't have an estimate onto those ones, but based off of the last one we just did at Civic, it was quite pricey. Resurface asphalt at 3 of our parking flat lot locations at $100,000. Security cameras of various structures, we are looking at about $400,000. Cement structure repair at the Civic Underground. We don't have an estimate for on this one, but it's a considerable amount of cement repairs that we need to do at the structure. Install smart sensor monitors. That's something we're looking at doing. Digital wayfinder signs installed within our structures. digital display boards to display available space within our structures, looking at about 150,000 to get those at our structures. Build towards a more enhanced pay-by-phone options to benefit our citizens a visit. And then our last one is install EV chargers in all our parking lots and our flat lots. So as you can see, it's a considerable amount of money that we're going to be looking to spend to benefit our citizens and our guests that come and visit us here in the downtown Albuquerque.
And that's not their place.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. Councilor Benton, is that in response to what we just heard?
It is, Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
So, yeah, I think without question, these operations involve a lot of capital expenditures. So are you saying, Mr. Kaiser, that we're using, if I may, Madam Chair, and pardon the indulgence as not a committee member, but as the sponsor. So these significant capital improvements, are we using the operating general fund revenue for these, or are we bonding it in some way, or how is that occurring?
Do we want to go to the budget conference room for the response to that, Mr. Davis?
Yeah, as an enterprise, oh, sorry, Madam Chair, as an enterprise fund, we would primarily pay for those out of, working capital balance. And if we had to, if we were able to, then we'd issue debt against, the revenue stream, but primarily from the working capital fund balance. And I just wanted to add real quick, Madam Chair, on Jeremy's presentation. We are looking for expenses to outpace revenues in fiscal years 2021 and 22. So that will be eating a little bit away at the working capital balance as well.
Okay, thank you. On Councilor Pena, I just want to make sure that we either in all of that you got your questions answered, or that we can revisit that from earlier.
Yeah, I think once it's at full council, we'll probably have more questions. I just kind of wanted to hear from them to see, because it was my understanding that there's really not that much revenue, and so it seems like maybe there's a disconnect. So obviously we're going to have to make sure that maybe we have a better plan moving forward in terms of what the parking division is doing. I can understand from Councilor Davis and Councilor Benton, and I don't have too much of it here on this section of Central, but I know I do get a lot of constituent calls about parking, and so, and I think they do a lot in terms of the repairs that need to be done, but maybe we just need more clarity for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And I think that it would be beneficial, Mr. Kaiser, if you want to send over any of that information. That way we can see. I think that some of the councilors would really like to be able to compare what you were saying as far as the amounts of money in and the amounts of money out in the new projections that we're going to have.
I'll make that happen.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions? All right, so I believe that we are going to vote on a motion without recommendation. Ms. Hinojos?
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Harris,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
Yes.
Councilor Sena,
Yes.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
It passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item H, R129. Councilor Sena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. R129 is approving and authorizing the acceptance of grant funds from Living Cities and providing an appropriation to the legal department for the fiscal year 2021 and 2022. I move it do pass.
Okay, and is there a second? Councilor Borrego, second. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the councilors or from the administration? All right, we will go to a vote. Ms. Hinojos?
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Harris,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
Yes.
Councilor Sena,
Yes.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. We'll move on to our final agenda item, item I, R134. I will go ahead and defer to the sponsors on who wants to introduce this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll introduce 134, establishing a priorities list for the City of Albuquerque's future open space land acquisitions, identifying immediate priorities and special provisions for certain properties. I would like to actually move this without recommendation to full council.
Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and take Councilor Borrego as a second. And I want to start with Councilor Harris from the beginning of the meeting. He had a question, and I'd like to give him that opportunity.
Sure. Same question from the administration. What is the interest that we are getting from the trust fund? How much is in there? What's the interest that we're earning?
Go ahead,
Madam Chair, Councilor Harris, typical range is earning interest anywhere from 2.5% to 3%, and we earn anywhere from $260,000 to $300,000 annually. As a fiscal year, we had $914,000 in earned interest, and I believe we've used $508,000 of that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Simon.
And then follow up, please, Madam Chair. And how much money is in the trust fund right now?
I believe there is current market value of 12.7 million.
How much? 12?
12.7.
12.7, about 13 million?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Harris. I see we have Councilor Borrego and then Councilor Sena.
Actually, I'll wait until our full council meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Sena.
Madam Chair, quick follow-up to Councilor Harris's question. That 12.7 includes the interest. So corpus would be 11.7, Councilor Harris.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I just wanted to clarify a few things with our community who are watching. And I know we'll be actually discussing this further at full council, or at least that's my hope, that the language of this resolution, I imagine, will change eventually. I think that just for the sake of this being at multiple committees, that we'll wait until full council to address some of the language. But it does say that we're going to look at all available funding sources and mechanisms, and the Open Space Trust Fund is only kind of a last resort if we must. I don't imagine so. And you know, as I did this as one of my capital outlay requests to our legislature and as one of my priorities, I actually requested the full amount that's in this resolution to our state legislators so that they could support that as well. So we're looking at all options. The language of this and the intent isn't to actually touch too much of this Open Space Trust Fund. It's only as if we absolutely need to. And so I just hope that we can have that full discussion with our community. I know that, you know, I definitely respect and thank our Open Space Advisory Board for putting the pool property as part of the priority acquisition list. And I know that it was unanimously supported. I just want to note that this deal that we have is before us right now. We certainly don't want to miss this opportunity, especially with the state invested interest of $4.5 million. So I don't want to go too much into detail, but I think we'll be discussing this further, that all parties interested in this property are at the table right now. So we're working with all parties, and I just think that we have a real opportunity to protect this property. So I can't wait to have this full discussion with all of our counselors at council.
Thank you, Councilor Sena. And then I see Councilor Pena. I just want to ask Councilor Pena, is there, Director Simon has been on the screen and I wasn't sure if I should go to him first or if you would prefer to ask first.
Madam Chair, if I can just ask that way, my question is for Director Simon too, so he can have a whole laundry list of things to respond to. So anyway, I just wanted to say that, I kind of agree with Councillor Harris when we're looking at our open space, the Southwest area, again, Here I Go doesn't really have very much open space and or opportunities for open space. And, that $1 million seems to always be the thing that's the huge debate when we're talking about open space. So I do think that we need to look for other ways and other means on how to acquire open space. But so my question for Director Simon is that, do you have some type of strategic plan? Because I know when I was trying to do look for money for Crestview Bluff, I know that the federal government has kind of relayed to us that, there's lots of grant opportunities out there to acquire money for open space. And I was just wondering, do you have like a grants manager, or is that something that you're thoroughly investigating? Because there is, limited space in the city of Albuquerque to grow in general. And then when we identify these pristine areas that, will be a benefit to our community, we keep running into this $1 million open space pot of money. And it seems like we keep, racking our brains on how to acquire additional land. So Director Simon, thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Director Simon, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilor Pena, there were a couple of questions in there. I'll try to get as best I can an answer to all of them. First of all, yeah, we do have a strategic plan for acquisitions that's essentially comprised of our major public open space acquisition priority list, and that's one of the reasons why we're here today with this resolution, so that we can make some changes to that list as conditions change and opportunities change. And so that's sort of our guiding compass, if you will, as to where we hope to acquire additional lands. And some of those lands are in the on the list are actually technically in the southwest part of the city, although they're closer to I-40, so it's a little further north there. But we're always looking for opportunities, to add to the system, resources permitting. Now, your question about grant funding is a good one. There was a program that existed through the Department of the Interior, which supplied matching grants for local projects, like similar to many of the ones that we pursue. That program existed for a couple years. Then it was suspended for a year, so we were not able to, unfortunately, apply when we wanted to apply because they didn't take any applications. And then under the most recently departed Secretary of the Interior, he changed the guidelines of the program in such a way on his way out the door to essentially penalize New Mexico and make us ineligible for some of those grant funds. Now that's a decision that I think the new administration is going to revisit, and I hope that they will they'll change that and go back to the strategy for that grant program that existed before. So I think before too long, and then subsequently the Congress has passed a very large bill last fall that will increase matching and shared monies with the states for open space and land protection initiatives. So the incoming administration, the Biden administration, I think is looking at those things now. I suspect what they'll do is suspend implementation of the prior secretary's order, go back and hopefully resume the original guidelines for giving out grants to states. And when they do that, we'll be back in line and submitting applications for funding here in New Mexico. So we do not have technically a grants manager on staff, but we're well aware of those particular grant opportunities and hope to be able to compete for one soon.
Madam Chair, if I could follow up.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Director Simon. You know, I know you're always working really hard. I appreciate all the work that you do in the Southwest area, but I just do want to say for the record, none of those properties are in District 3. But you know, I know we do have a small space off of Dennis Chavez, but I really do. I really think that we should kind of put our heads together and really talk about, you know, federal funding and how we do that and make sure that we're in a position to be able to apply for them, because this $1 million, I mean, it feels like sometimes us 9 counselors are, you know, playing tug of war to be able to access those dollars. And it just, you know, and so it's like, you know, what's the definition of insanity, right? So I think there really is. I think there's some opportunities, hearing from our lobbyists, that there's definitely opportunities for grants, and you know, and then working with the New Mexico folks, because I know when we were applying for Crestview Bluff, even though you required matching funds, we were you know, we kind of had the application there, and then the state of New Mexico kind of decided not to submit the application. So I think we have to navigate through all those hurdles so that we can start getting some money flowing. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Director. Any other questions or comments right now? Okay, we will go for a vote. Counselor Senna had moved it without recommendation.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Senna.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you, Ms. Hinojos. And there being no further business, this FGO committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.